The world expected Superman to save cities, stop wars, and stand beside the flag that raised him. But no one expected the moment when he would step away from it. The cameras flashed outside the United Nations building. Reporters shouted questions in dozens of languages. The world's most powerful leaders sat inside waiting for a statement that no one could predict. Then a red and blue blur dropped gently from the sky. Superman landed on the marble steps. The crowd went silent. He didn't look angry. He didn't look proud. His face carried something far heavier: certainty. A reporter finally shouted the question everyone was thinking. Superman, is it true you're giving up your American citizenship? For a moment, he didn't answer. His eyes slowly scanned the crowd, the cameras, the flags waving in the wind. Every nation was represented there. Then he spoke calm and steady. Yes. The word hit the crowd like thunder. Gasps spread through the reporters. Phones lifted. Headlines were already forming before he even continued. I have not stopped caring about this country, Superman said. But the world has changed. Borders are smaller now. Crises are shared. He paused. When I act, governments claim I represent them. When I save lives, it becomes policy. The crowd leaned closer. That cannot continue. The wind moved his cape slightly as he finished. Tomorrow I will officially renounce my citizenship. No one understood why. Not yet. Because the truth didn't start at the United Nations. It started days earlier. In a quiet meeting outside Camp David. 2 nights before the announcement, a quiet road outside Camp David was sealed off by security vehicles and floodlights. Daniel Cross, the president's national security advisor, stood alone on the gravel path. His hands were in his coat pockets, but his eyes kept checking the dark sky. He hated waiting, especially when the person he was waiting for could hear his heartbeat from miles away. The wind shifted. A soft thud landed behind him. Cross turned quickly. Superman stood there, calm, cape moving gently in the night air. Hope I didn't keep you waiting, Superman said. Cross forced a polite smile and extended his hand. Daniel Cross, National Security Advisor. Superman shook it once. I know who you are. Cross cleared his throat. Then you understand why the president is concerned. Superman remained quiet. Cross continued, his voice more serious now. You flew into Norden yesterday. Right into the center of a massive political protest. He stepped closer. That city is on the edge of collapse. Armed police. Military patrols. A government ready to shut everything down. Cross studied Superman's face. And suddenly you appear in the main square. Superman looked toward the distant tree line. You placed yourself between protesters and soldiers, Cross continued. The entire world saw it. He lowered his voice. The government there says you acted on behalf of the United States. A long silence followed. Cross finally asked the question everyone in Washington wanted answered. Tell me the truth, Superman. Why did you go there? Superman didn't answer right away. Instead, he looked past Daniel Cross toward the dark forest surrounding Camp David. For a moment the night felt very quiet. I saw the reports, he finally said. Cross frowned. Reports. From Norden, Superman continued. Students disappearing. Protest organizers arrested overnight. Social media used to track people instead of protecting them. His voice stayed calm, but there was weight behind it. I watched parents walking their sons and daughters to the protests. I saw shop owners closing early so they could join the crowds. I saw fear. But I also saw courage. Cross folded his arms. Courage doesn't change governments. Sometimes it does, Superman replied. He continued. The government warned them to stop. They said the next protest would have consequences. And yet people still came, he said. Cross shook his head slightly. So you decided to intervene. I decided to show up. Superman corrected. He lifted his eyes toward the sky, remembering. I landed in Liberty Square just after sunrise. No speech. No threats. No orders. Cross raised an eyebrow. Then what did you do? Superman answered simply. I stood there. Cross blinked. That's it. For 24 hours, Superman said. The square slowly filled with people. First hundreds. Then thousands. By nightfall, the entire city seemed to be moving toward that one place. They didn't come because I told them to, Superman said quietly. They came because they believed someone was finally standing with them. By the time the sun reached the center of the sky above Norden, Liberty Square was no longer just a protest. It had become something else. From the air the city looked like a river of people flowing toward one point. Streets filled. Rooftops crowded. Every road leading to the square turned into a slow-moving wave of humanity. And at the center of it all, Superman stood exactly where he had landed. He hadn't moved. Daniel Cross listened carefully. How many people were there? At first, Superman said. Maybe 100,000. Cross whistled quietly. But they kept coming. Superman remembered the faces. An elderly man placing a small candle near his boots. A group of university students sitting in a circle nearby. A mother holding her daughter on her shoulders so she could see over the crowd. No speeches, Superman said. No leaders. Cross frowned. That's impossible. It wasn't organized, Superman replied. It was hope. By sunset, the number had grown far beyond what anyone expected. More than 1 million people packed the square and every street around it. And then the soldiers arrived. Armored trucks rolled into position. Riot police formed heavy lines at every entrance. Floodlights turned night into harsh white daylight. Cross leaned forward slightly. And you still didn't move. Superman shook his head. No. Did you threaten them? No. Did you tell the crowd what to do? No. Cross stared at him. Then, what exactly were you trying to prove? Superman looked back at him calmly. That sometimes, the strongest thing you can do is refuse to fight. Night fell over Norriton, but Liberty Square did not sleep. Floodlights from armored trucks painted the crowd in harsh white light. The air was thick with tension. Soldiers stood shoulder to shoulder behind metal shields. Riot police lined every street leading into the square. More trucks kept arriving. More weapons. More fear. Daniel Cross listened carefully as Superman continued the story. The government believed the protest would collapse overnight, Superman said. They thought people would get tired and go home, but they didn't. Instead, the crowd grew louder. Chants echoed through the city streets. Phones glowed like small stars in the dark as people streamed the moment to the world. Millions more were watching online. And the soldiers were watching too. Cross frowned. That kind of pressure can break people. It almost did, Superman said quietly. He remembered the moment clearly. A bottle flew through the air from somewhere deep in the crowd. It shattered against the pavement near the police line, flames spreading briefly across the stone. The square froze. Soldiers raised their rifles. Shields tightened. All it would take was one shot. One mistake. And the entire square would explode into chaos. Cross leaned forward. What did you do? Superman looked at him calmly. Nothing. The crowd waited. The soldiers waited. Superman simply stood there unmoving between both sides. But inside he knew the truth. If violence started, the world wouldn't see a protest anymore. They would see a war. The tension in Liberty Square reached its breaking point. Flames from the shattered bottle flickered across the pavement. Smoke drifted slowly between the police line and the sea of protesters. Thousands of people held their breath at the same time. The soldiers tightened their grip on their rifles. Superman remembered the sound. Safety switches clicking. Daniel Cross felt a chill as he listened. They were seconds away. Yes, Superman said quietly. Behind the front line, commanders shouted orders. Riot shields shifted forward. Soldiers adjusted their aim, trying to control a crowd that was now more than 1 million people strong. From above, helicopters circled like dark birds in the night sky. Every camera in the world was watching. If one bullet was fired, the reaction would be instant. Panic would spread. People would run. Soldiers would respond. The square would turn into chaos within seconds. And Superman knew something worse. If violence began, both sides would blame him. The government would say he provoked rebellion. Protesters would expect him to protect them. Either way, the moment would spiral beyond control. Cross asked slowly, "So what were you thinking in that moment?" Superman looked down for a second before answering. "I promised myself before I arrived," he said. "No matter what happened, I would not fight. Even if it meant standing there while the world collapsed around him." For the first time that night, Cross understood the risk. Superman wasn't the strongest person in that square. He was the most vulnerable. For several long seconds, nothing moved in Liberty Square. The flames on the pavement slowly died out. Smoke drifted through the air between the two sides. Soldiers held their rifles steady. Protesters stood frozen, afraid that even a small movement could trigger the first shot. Superman remained exactly where he was, unmoving, silent, watching. Daniel Cross leaned forward slightly. What broke the moment? Superman looked up, remembering. It wasn't me. From somewhere near the front of the crowd, a single man stepped forward. He wasn't shouting. He wasn't carrying a sign. He was holding a rose. People around him whispered, trying to pull him back. But he kept walking slowly toward the line of soldiers. The square held its breath. The man stopped just a few steps away from the nearest soldier. For a moment it looked like the end of everything. The soldier's rifle was still raised. The crowd tensed. Superman watched carefully but didn't move. Then the man extended his hand. The rose rested gently in his palm. Seconds passed. Then the soldier lowered his rifle. Very slowly. He reached out and took the flower. A ripple moved through the crowd. No cheering. No shouting. Just a wave of quiet disbelief. In that moment the square changed. Not because of power, but because two strangers chose something different. The moment the soldier accepted the rose, something invisible shifted in Liberty Square. The tension that had wrapped around the crowd all night slowly loosened. Soldiers glanced at each other. Protesters lowered their voices. The silence felt different now, lighter, almost fragile. Superman finally moved. Just one small step. Not toward the soldiers. Not toward the protesters. Simply forward. The entire square watched him. He didn't give any speech, Daniel Cross asked quietly. Superman shook his head. No. Because words would have broken the moment. The soldier still held the rose. The protester stepped back into the crowd. The rifles stayed lowered. No orders were shouted. No shots were fired. The night passed. When the sun finally rose over Noreddin, Liberty Square was still full, but the danger had faded. People slowly began to leave, carrying candles, flowers, and a story they would never forget. Superman looked at Cross. That's when I knew something, he said. What? Cross asked. That the world doesn't always need someone to win a fight. He looked toward the sky. Sometimes it just needs someone who refuses to start one. That was why the decision came next. Not out of anger. Not out of rejection. But out of responsibility. Because if Superman truly stood for everyone, then he could not belong to just one nation. Comment 1 for the next story.